We are so excited about sharing with you our new retreat, Becoming Unshakable from Self Doubt to Daring.
Yeah. Oh, we love doing retreats. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We really enjoy that group in-person process. Everything that Walker and I create is something that we do with a lot of intention. Every retreat we do is a new retreat. We don't repeat retreats. And so it's always an adventure for us in creating the next one based off where he and I are in our own personal growth journey.
Yeah. We look forward to holding space for you.
Yeah, we hope you'll consider joining us.
My Inner Knowing, empowering you to find your compass for the journey. We are dedicated to supporting you to rediscover and trust your natural ability to navigate life each day by sharing insight and experience through the lens of two professional communicators and their guests. We intend to prompt internal inquiry that supports all those willing to explore a unique path.
Well, hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little stressed out. I've just, got here from work and just a lot of things going on, but happy to be here.
Mm.
I love you.
I love you too.
Mhm.
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
I wanted to visit with you today about relationships in the workplace
Mm.
and how to gain confidence at work.
Mm. Sure. Wow. Whew, where to start? I'll start with relationships in the workplace. I mean, I think about that's as it is probably for all of us that have a job outside the home, a significant part of our life. We can spend more time with the people we work with than the people that we live with. And so I think they can be really supportive, kind of world expanding. It can be really difficult, very unhealthy. So I think my first job where I got paid a paycheck was when I was 13. And I worked with my dad every summer at his work. And a lot of the time I was by myself working on projects, painting or mowing or scraping bird poop off statues or whatever needed to be done. But it was at a private school, and there were nuns that worked there. They ran the school and worked there. So I guess I would have called them my coworkers because there was nobody else there my age.
Mhm.
So it was my dad and them. And they were kind, um, nurturing, funny, um, quirky, lovely people. They really were. The one I remember most was Sister Geraldine, and she was, I don't know, 4'8", probably, just tiny. But she was really engaging and curious. And so it was a nice relationship. She was supportive. She would, if it was really, really hot, she'd bring me a drink and a banana.
Potassium.
Potassium.
Right? Yeah. Make sure you didn't get cramps.
Yeah. So, so that was really nice, loving. They were people who had traveled the world, and they were people who were willing to share stories. And when I got married, and the sisters sold the school to a private group of parents, and they actually gave them some of my first furniture that I had when I was married. And so it was loving and supportive. And I felt like I learned a lot from them. And I know this is something you've never heard because I don't think about it very often. But when you ask, I'm like, whoo, going back to work, it was really nice having people who were, I don't know, paid attention, engaged, supportive, nurturing. It was lovely. Then my first job not connected to my parents would have been when I was 16. I got a job at a fabric store, and that was fascinating.
Yeah. What about it?
I was raised Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, Catholic college. And in my church, at least, we didn't really talk about other religions. And so I really had no understanding of other religions at all. I mean, at all.
Sure.
So there was a group of kids that worked there, and they were really kind. They belonged to a Baptist church, which was right by my house. And their lives were very different than mine. I don't know. I guess I didn't think of my life as being church focused, but I guess I was just immersed in it. Even though I didn't really feel connected to it, it was what I did every day. Probably the only day I wasn't there was almost every Saturday. But they were people that I feel like expanded my world. Again, the kids that I worked with were kind. Their friends were kind. I hung out with them. It's funny because I didn't think about them when we did our podcast on friendships. But when I was in high school, I hung out with them too. And they were actually who I went drag racing with. They weren't the people I went to high school with.
Nice.
They were a different group of kids.
Yes, Theresa's got a lead foot. Even though she won't admit it.
I admit it.
I'm glad you survived your drag racing years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so they were really kind. I struggled with their parents, but I didn't struggle with them. They were really sweet. Overall, if there were problems, I wasn't aware that there were problems.
What do you think?
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think the ideal workplace relationship looks like?
Ooh, that's interesting. I think about, man, there's just been so many. Ideal.
Don't put too much like overlay of judgment on that.
Okay? Yeah. Okay.
Let me ask it this way. What do you think a healthy workplace relationship, whether it's one-on-one or as a group,
Sure.
What does that look like to you?
To me, thank you. Because I was going to say, well, to me, what I have now is really nice. And how I would describe that, which, is, again, my perspective. It may not necessarily be everybody else in the office perspective. But I think overall we are kind to each other.
Kind is a repeat theme. Important.
Curious. We share, different things that are going on in our life, but we have our own lives. We come to work and we work and do our thing, and we go home and have that life. And so for me, it's, connected and curious and kind, but I don't need them to be okay.
What do you mean?
Right. I don't need them to be my friend to be okay. And I mean friend as in hanging out regularly, texting regularly, calling regularly. I don't drink, but drinking together, like I don't like that, piece. um, I don't need in order to be connected and care for them and enjoy hearing whatever, I mean, I think often we share funny stories that are going on in our life, but a lot of times I think our relationship centers around um, some level of respect for each other, but also passion about the work that we do together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that matters, that we enjoy what we're doing, we enjoy where we're doing it, um, that we are all, curious seekers. Um, but I don't. Um, it's very different than when I was younger.
When you were younger, or like when you were working at the law firm or the accounting
Yeah,
firms?
law firm, accounting firm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell
I
us.
think that there was more of a need for a relationship.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think about the first law firm that I worked at and a woman that worked there. She was of similar age, maybe 2 years older than me. She was in a very different phase of life, though. She was, had a steady boyfriend and was getting married, um, and I had a boyfriend, but he worked evenings, and so, after work, she and I would often hang out, and it would be like the three of us hanging out, like her and I and her boyfriend, fiance.
Sure. Okay.
And I think there was a sense of like being chosen that I needed. Um, I don't recall struggling to be home alone, but I don't know that I was often home alone. Um, and I think that continued into my other corporate jobs that I had. I think it continued through graduate school too. And so I feel like, what's coming to mind as we're talking about this is the nonviolent communication piece where you talk about your needs assessment. You're like looking at like what needs are getting met and what needs are not getting met. And what comes to me now was that there were definitely needs I was not getting met in my relationships. And so um whether that was family or friends or partner. And so I feel like the work friendships I had were, there was probably a desperateness to some of them, where I feel
What do you
like
mean by that?
that I needed to be seen, chosen, recognized, valued. So I think there was always some level of tension. Um, I think it was easier for me to get drawn into workplace drama or gossip when I was younger,
Hmm.
looking for my place.
Sure.
Hmm. And I would say probably too, now looking back, probably also trying to form relationship with who I thought had the most power. But I didn't have any awareness of that then. That's something that I can look back on and be like, oh,
Sure.
okay.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my mind, on whatever level of consciousness, trying to ensure some level of safety. Yeah. What are you thinking when I say that?
Oh, I was just trying to tab back through, my career path.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on just basically working for myself with maybe a paralegal and maybe an associate, but mostly just me
Mm-hmm. Since,
for 21 years.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
been a long time since I've worked with other people, so I was tabbing back to those times and way back when I first, had my first job out of college
Mm-hmm.
and what that was like,
Mm-hmm.
whether I could see myself
Mm-hmm.
gravitating that way.
Which way?
Um, the what you were just describing about, the group dynamic and the person with power and how to fit in and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, sorry, I'm taking you off track.
No, it's not off track.
Yeah. I think that it's probably not uncommon when we're young.
Mm.
No different than in a social setting. So it's different. And I've worked in what I think are good work environments. When I worked for the Treasury Department,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it was very progressive for its day back in the, shoot,
80s.
late 80s, early 90s. Yeah.
Okay.
And very professional, but people were kind. There were activities, people's retirements and, babies and different things like that. There would be, we'd take a break and there'd be a cake and that sort of thing. It was a really nice, supportive environment. If I needed help understanding something, I could ask and not be ashamed for the most part. And it was a great place to work. But not all places I've worked have been that way. I worked in a battery factory when I was in college from 3:30 to midnight. Mopping floors and sandblasting battery casings and different things like that. And in that environment, there was a lot of teasing that went on.
Okay.
Like they toilet papered my Jeep, and just a lot of teasing, name calling in a supposedly joking way, that sort of stuff. So it wasn't a supportive environment.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I worked as a lawyer, and that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. What do you mean?
And this isn't everybody's experience, but my experience in that workplace was there was a superficial camaraderie. We would all go to lunch every day.
Okay.
And then with individuals, there would be joking around and, that sort of stuff to lighten the tension of what we had to do. But I think that there was always an underlying competition for who was going to get the most credit or make the most money.
Okay.
And so just in thinking about relationships in the workplace, it's just, if you have what I call a healthy environment where people are kind to one another, they're professional and passionate about what they do. There's like a unified, everybody's not going to see it the same way. When I say unified, we're all moving in the same direction and people are bringing their individual talents to make this sum or the whole greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
Kind of how I view what goes on at your office for the most part. And when I say the most part, I mean that there have been some hires that didn't work out.
Yes.
And that can change that whole dynamic.
Yes.
So anyway, without me going on and on about it, let's talk about your environment because it's, it is what you described, at least from an outsider's perspective. But when you've had people that, I don't know, want to gossip or talk about somebody behind their backs or whatever the other experiences might be. And I'm not saying that this is exactly what's happened because I don't know everything that's happened at your office. I just know that some people have come and gone and it hasn't been helpful. When you have a dynamic with somebody in the workplace that is moving it from this healthy, at least how we're discussing healthy, everybody is contributing and giving their best effort, they're passionate, you're moving in the same direction. and it starts detracting from that or putting a wet blanket on it. How do you handle that?
Mm.
If you say you're not the boss, right?
Yeah.
How do we navigate that sea?
Well, it's so interesting because my first thought is, we don't do that very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I can think of plenty of times in my past that I didn't handle that very well.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you worked in places that were big enough, there would always be somebody that triggered something in
Oh,
you,
sure,
right?
sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hundreds of people for
Right.
sure that I was around every day. For me at this point, it really is about getting curious, doing enough work on myself that I can work on not taking it personally. I can work on not feeling a need to defend myself, that I can, it's not excusing the other person's behavior, but look for what might be contributing to the struggle. I'm looking to see if this is a pattern of behavior or an exception to behavior, like we've talked about before. Because to me, a pattern of behavior is indicative of something different than an exception to behavior. Like if someone just has a really bad day and you're like, whoa, what, what's up with that?
Right.
Not to, throw the person away because they had a really bad reaction to something, really looking for a pattern of unhealth. And so for me, even if I'm more in an observer role with that person, let's say at a larger company and you're in a meeting and there's somebody who really can be disruptive, for me, it would be being curious with them in the meeting when they bring up something, even if it's something we don't agree with. Tell me more about that. Tell me your thought process about that. Help me understand. Walk me through it. I'm really wanting to, create more curiosity and connection. It doesn't mean it'll always work, though. I mean, some people don't want that.
Right.
A lot of us do, but some people don't. And so it's really not about, trying to change the other person's behavior. For me, it's learning how much energy am I going to put in trying to change their behavior if there's no point.
Sure. And how do I regulate myself around what they do?
Right. Yeah. What came to mind when you were thinking about that?
And it's still my work environment, but I told you about my experience at court the other day
Yeah.
where a judge came walking down the hallway and I greeted him. We were friendly, all that stuff. And, and he said, what have you been doing? I said, oh, I was in the courtroom next door. And he said, well, how did that judge treat you? And I said, great. Well, I'm going to have to talk with them.
Right.
And it's that sort of, and it's not unusual. I'm sure I ran into that from time to time at the bigger law firms.
Right.
There's some people, and it can be a pattern that you have to work yourself around.
Right.
Of somebody who wants to say those sorts of things to keep you off balance and to make you insecure because of whatever their issues are. Right.
Right. Do you remember how you responded to that at court the other day?
Oh, I didn't get angry.
Yeah. I mean, but do you remember, did you say anything? Did you laugh?
Oh, I think I chuckled, that laugh that I have.
Yeah.
And I think I said, well, I hope not. Something like that.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like in a circumstance like that where, in this particular case, I've had exposure to that judge. And so for me, in that case, anytime he approached me in the future outside of the courtroom, I would not engage in conversation.
Right.
It'd just be like, so good to see you. I got to go.
Right.
Because typically they're information seeking, and it's going to be used against you in some way, even if it's just to, connect through negative
Come up
gossip.
with the next negative thing to
Right.
state.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
no, and it is learning to set boundaries around, and it's like I said, that could be anybody
Right.
in a workplace
Right.
that they just, I think when I was younger, I would get angry, they have it out for me, and maybe they do,
Mm-hmm.
but it is distracting from what you're there to do.
Right.
And that's part of the gaining confidence in the workplace piece that we'll turn to before this is done. But
Right.
yeah, I think what you're saying about I'm not going to, um, leave that boundary wide open so
Mm-hmm.
they can steer this. I'm going to regulate myself. Number one, very important
Right.
and harder to do when you're younger,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I don't even know that we know that that's a thing for most people, regulating ourselves.
Well, and I guess let's be specific.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned over time, especially after starting doing meditation,
Mm-hmm.
to exercise that pause between stimulus and response,
Right.
and also to have a broader view. What are my words? How will they impact the other person?
Mm-hmm.
How are they coming from me?
Mm-hmm.
Before I say them.
Yeah.
And so that pause piece, though, for me is regulating. It's like, okay, if somebody dings me in the
Mm-hmm.
past, I would have responded with, some passive aggressive response,
Yeah.
right? Well, fuck you too,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Nice backhanded statement.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need to prove myself that way anymore.
Right.
So that's regulating to me, to, getting grounded, feeling my feet on the floor, taking a breath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be awkward or weird. Once you start that process, you can bring yourself pretty present pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Boom.
Yeah.
And then what you're saying is, yeah, great to see you. Hey, how are you? Great to see you. Got an appointment.
Right. Right.
And that way you're not giving them that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or if they're just awful, because some people can be.
Yes.
What do you do then?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think about in the workplace and in that particular case, the positional piece
Mm-hmm.
and which conversations are going to have a possibility of having an impact and which ones don't.
Yeah.
And so if someone was really not kind or competitive, I really am just observing them in other interactions, trying to understand what's happening so I'm not taking it so personally. And maybe we are the only person that they're targeting, but oftentimes we're not.
And it feels like it, doesn't
feels like it, right?
When someone's got a real powerful vibe.
Right, right. It can feel like it's just us when it's like really naturally it's maybe everybody, but maybe a few people they don't do that with. Maybe people that they see as more powerful than them, or they feel
they
like
can get something from,
they can get something from them. And so, yeah, I think going into observer mode, I think is most important first, along with grounding, regulating, like you were talking about, really trying to see more clearly what's happening. That way we're not always in reactive mode. Yeah. Because I think that is often where we are.
Yeah. It's interesting. What's occurring to me is the confidence, gaining confidence in the workplace, I think comes into play right at this moment.
Right.
Okay. Which is if the person's your boss, it can be a whole different ballgame.
Right.
But still,
right.
What I tell people in the interview process when they're prepping is, what is your value added?
Yeah.
Why do you want this in the first place? So why am I working here?
Yes.
And if the answer is just for a paycheck, then it's going to be hard.
It is. It is.
And so even if it is just for a paycheck for a while, there's still, the fact is you're working, you're getting paid. My advice, and have I always done it? I'm sure not. But my advice would be figure out what's your value added? How can I contribute to this company, even at this point?
Mm-hmm.
And what can I do to move forward in that direction as often as possible throughout the day?
Mm-hmm.
Engaging or getting upset or
Mm-hmm.
taking it personally with this person who wants to do it
Yeah.
is not on mission.
Right.
Right. And I think to gain confidence in the workplace, you first have to know, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And once you know that,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I don't know, the vision that comes is like a lighthouse on the, you got rising seas, all that, and there it is.
Right.
So you can bring you back present to, this is my mission, what I'm supposed to be doing, how I feel good about myself, that I've been ethical and responsible and doing the things that I should do to get a paycheck.
Right.
And, how am I contributing to this company? Because if you ask yourself that every day and you ask your boss that, you're going to gain confidence because you'll get positive feedback because you intend it and you want it.
Right. You may not get positive feedback, but you're going to get feedback.
True.
Just because you are curious and inquiring doesn't mean you'll get positive feedback. Right. And so, but the feedback regardless, and it's interesting, what I think about when you say that is, I don't know how many of us actually want feedback.
Well, it's scary.
Right.
For sure.
Right. And so gaining confidence is, that part of being brave, which is, I do want feedback. I need to ask for feedback.
Right.
Feedback, even if I'm afraid of it, avoiding it isn't healthy or helpful. And if I ask for feedback and it's consistently, shaming or off-putting or diminishing or whatever, that gives us information too. I just think we're often conditioned to avoid, so we don't really have to make a choice.
Yeah.
And so we can avoid asking for feedback at work so that we don't have to choose to do something different or to leave or to set boundaries or whatever. So it's not healthy. So for me, gaining confidence is that what you were just talking about, stepping in, being brave, being curious. And if the reaction is consistently negative, then go.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Also, just because it's negative, and part of this is just that bigger picture that we're talking about, is the grounding and the pausing process, but also not taking it personally. And sometimes it is personal, right? And a lot of times it may not be. Maybe you've just got a cranky boss that, loves people outside of the moment, but man, they're there and they're just cranky, and so they cut you off in a meeting, for example. Well, that's not the way the company does things. What's the effective way to address that?
Yeah.
To get all upset and resentful and, have an attitude around the office, or to have a conversation with the boss and say, I would love to hear how I can do this better because I want to contribute.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Oh, it's so much judgment. And again, that's why I think the observation, going into the observer, is the best place to start.
Sure.
So that we can really see what's happening. I don't think if we have a negative, experience that, like I need to then sit down with my boss right now because I need to know the answer right now.
I'm not talking about right now.
Right.
That would be, to me, the wrong time.
It would be reactive, right? It would feel
rest.
Compulsive, right? So getting grounded, getting clear, going into your observer. And, what I imagine is if you have a boss that's really fine, but they tend to be grouchy in meetings because they don't know how to deliver a message well, or they're afraid of people's reactions. And so the only way they know how to do it is to be blunt about it. Because there is that, right? Yeah. There is that. For me, if it's really just a matter of delivery, but it's not really their heart or their mission, I would sit down with them and I would recommend trying to say something like, um, I will I will do my work on this. I'm not asking you to do my work for me. But what I recognize is that in meetings for myself, when, something is asked of you and the way you respond, um, doesn't seem like you're taking it into consideration, it feels like we lose productivity. It feels like we lose our focus. It feels like as a team, we are not as connected, that we all go into some level of self-preservation, um, and we're not really putting energy towards the goal. And so I'm going to keep doing my work because I value the work and the job and being here. I just recognize that. And because I don't think, most of us are just struggling and we're not thinking about the impact that we're having on other people.
Right.
We're just trying to push through our own fear, our own anxiety, our own reactivity. And so I feel like if we are genuinely observant and thoughtful, and it's not telling somebody what to do, it really is, for me, bringing awareness in regards to efficiency. I think about that, company that I worked with the last few years, and, so many conversations with people, whether it was, mid management or whatever, all the levels. um, like when I would suggest talking to someone that was their superior in that way, it was kind of like, you know, that's so scary.
Yeah.
And I understand it's scary. My expectation of you is to be brave. That's my expectation. And so, and it's not about being blunt. It's just really about being an observer and sharing what you notice the impact has on you. But again, you're not saying that's all your fault and you're responsible for my reaction. But I'm not sure if you recognize the impact that it's having. And so what happens is the meeting ends, and then people are spending 2 hours talking about what happened at the meeting instead of executing
Right.
whatever it is that you wanted us to execute, because everybody then is having to process whatever their experience was before they can get focused again. And you know this about me, my expectation of leaders is that they do their work.
Sure. No, I hear you.
So, and maybe it's not the right place for you.
Oh, if you can't get traction when you
Are reflective, calm,
Curious.
compassionate, curious. Sure. I just think most of us, I see this in the therapy room all the time. I'm afraid to leave. I'm afraid I won't get
Sure.
paid as much. I'm afraid of taking, even a lateral move. I'll look like I'm unreliable or immature. I don't want to take something that looks like it is a lesser position, because then people will, we have all of these reasons that come up that take away our power.
Yeah.
And so instead of having a compassionate, kind, curious voice, we hold it in,
Get cynical.
right?
Start gossiping.
Gossiping, right?
Yes.
Instead of being brave.
Yeah, and also forgetting the whole reason we're there, which is to contribute to the company that we're working for.
Right, which I think is a great point that you brought up earlier. Why are you here at this place doing this job at this time?
What is the best I can do under those circumstances?
Yeah.
And if that's your focus, the rest comes around, or it's time to move on.
Right, yeah. And I feel like, when people come in and, maybe things are difficult at a company that they're at, maybe the company is struggling, maybe it's a pattern for the company, maybe it's not. I'll say, where are you going to put your energy?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't help if we focus it on the distress. And it doesn't mean we don't process it and have conversation about it. It just means that doesn't become where our energy goes.
What's the typical answer to that? Or is there a typical answer?
To which part?
When you say, where do you think you should put your energy?
For me, it's finding something that maybe is getting neglected within a company. I can guarantee you, probably at almost every single workplace, if you needed something that you felt like you had some level of control over, that you could put some energy into, that if you went and asked whoever, the owner or HR or whatever, there'd be something that you could do, even if it is mentoring someone. I just don't think we ask. I think we just get stuck in whatever pattern we're in. Volunteering. Bigger companies have a lot of opportunities for people to volunteer for different committees and things. I mean, I remember that from when I was there.
Yeah.
And so for me, if the job you have is a struggle, are there other things you can do within the company to put energy into that make you feel like you have more purpose? For now, my philosophy is do something so that you have contrast. Don't just keep doing it and not doing anything else. Because then we just sit there and spin and we get stuck. And so for me, if you're stepping into something that is unfamiliar, if you're volunteering, if you're taking on a mentee, you're providing contrast for yourself. You're doing something else that's going to teach you, is this enough or is it not enough? But if we just sit and we spin, when do we move into action?
Yeah.
When we get just so fed up, we're just fucking done and we walk out the door, when we really haven't put energy into doing it any differently.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that happens often. So putting energy into something.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not at work, maybe you take up something else that you enjoy. I mean, it's been a long time since I worked at a big corporation, but there were people who would put energy into Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Sure.
And so it wasn't as much the work they were doing, it was the things that they were connected to because of work.
Mm-hmm.
that filled some level of passion or I don't know, a sense of accomplishment in them that they wouldn't have had access to otherwise. And so
I mean, I think if we're finding purpose and meaning associated with work or directly, then the confidence is going to come. And the other part is put in the time to become competent at what you do. I mean, I'm always reading some article. I buy books all the time. I go to seminars across the country because if I'm going to be a trial lawyer, I want to be the best when I walk in to that courtroom.
Right.
And I've learned so much, but that's the work behind making, having real confidence in what you do. And it takes time.
It does.
You got to be patient with yourself. It takes time to become.
And resources. For me, that about me too. I'm always learning, exploring, taking a new class, reading another book, research, whatever. I think I learned early on to step into that learning, that I was not going to rely on my very busy bosses to be the one that taught me, that I had to grow on my own.
Sure.
That I had to choose to grow in whatever capacity. It didn't matter.
Right.
but, waiting around for, the attorneys that I worked for to have time, to teach me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was harder. It required more effort for sure back then, the library, microfiche, it was.
It wasn't like today.
It wasn't like today. Google, right? Exactly.
Google or now
Exactly.
chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's that the continual choice to learn, to be curious. There are so many free resources out there
Yeah.
that people just don't even know exist. Like you can, if you're into science and technology, MIT has so many courses that are free.
Mhm.
I mean, you don't get credit for them, but they're available to you.
Right.
And so whether that is, YouTube or a university auditing a class, to me, gaining confidence in the workplace requires you to put effort into learning, growing, exploring, experimenting.
Yeah.
And not waiting around. Because if you think you're going to gain confidence in the workplace by waiting around for someone to help grow you up, you will wait a very long time.
Well, sure. And it's if the boss has to try to do that, you don't shine nearly as bright as if you're out there trying, or you go to the boss, I'm interested in becoming the best at what I do to make the most contribution I can. Can you give me some advice?
Right.
And then go take care of it.
Right. Do
versus
it.
asking them to, do that for you. Now, I mean, if it develops into a mentoring relationship, that's great, but you've got to read the tea leaves because bosses are busy.
Yeah, absolutely.
However, let's step back into your experience. You had a boss that taught you a lot as a mentor.
Yeah,
right?
he did. And what I would say is that I respected him and the work he did. So any advice he gave me, I did it. Didn't matter what it was. I remember him trying to help me learn how to keep track of all the projects that, I had to do. And he gave me this very basic, I don't know, 1,000 times copied Xerox of of a form, and I took and recreated it in Excel at some point. But I used that for, I don't know, 20 years to keep track of everything. And he was really helpful. So if he said, hey, read that or try that, I would always be like, okay, I'll do that. It was always helpful. He was watching me. He was observing. And I could go to him and ask, and he would give me feedback. And if he saw something, he would give me feedback. What I trusted in that particular regard was that he wanted better for me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a mentor, the difference between a lot of people and a mentor is.
Yeah. And definitely not everybody has that.
Yeah.
But he really did, I would say, supported my curiosity and efforts. And I really wanted to be, the best version of myself in whatever, job I had.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I always wanted to, and still do want to find my edge in everything. I don't want to, I learned at some point that waiting for someone to teach me, that I wasn't ever going to have that. Truly. Even Steve, who was so significant in my growth, I didn't stay there. And he wanted me to stay. It's just that because I didn't have a degree in accounting, my degree was in philosophy, they weren't going to pay me.
Right.
And, even though I believe that he didn't care. He wasn't the only partner there. There were plenty of others.
Sure.
And so, and maybe they didn't think I would leave. I don't know. But I did walk away from that mentorship
Yeah.
by leaving. And for me, that was about being respected. And I also talked to one of my managers about it because I was really struggling because I valued so much the education that I got there.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Theresa, do not stay for people. We will all be gone one day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important point about relationships in the workplace.
Mhm.
And again, to me, it comes back to what's your focus,
Mhm.
you know? So,
Yeah.
and you have to take that piece that you just stated,
Mhm.
you know, and use it positively, right? Which isn't, well, screw everybody else.
Oh, right.
I'm all out for number one,
Right.
right? That's, I don't think is,
No.
you
No.
know, is healthy in the workplace relationship,
No.
but recognizing
Mhm.
that, you know, I'm going to work hard. I want to bring my best, do the
Mhm.
best that I can to contribute to whatever the goal that the boss is laying down is,
Right.
right? And regardless of whether I get recognized or not,
Mhm.
that benefits me because I am learning every step of the way. And if it comes
Right.
to the point where, you know, I need to move on because I don't feel respected and I've done my best,
Mhm.
then I'm not staying out of some piece of loyalty like I owe somebody.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah. That
It's
I'm
powerful stuff.
responsible
Nice. Yeah.
for whatever.
Yeah. And as a young
Mhm.
person with that much, you know, because you had a lot of respect for him,
I did. Mhm.
you know, and really
Mhm.
heartfelt
Oh, yeah.
feelings for him all these
Absolutely.
years later,
Mhm.
to be able to stand up for yourself and just say, you know,
Mhm.
I'm worth more than this.
Right.
And thank you so much for
Right.
everything that you've taught me.
Right.
And go.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's like every other area of our life. How brave will we choose to be? Mhm.
Yeah, learning you know, for me, it's interesting in the law business. It took me years,
Mhm.
you know, and it's just like, gosh, I wish I'd had somebody, you know, a mentor, you know, but that was waiting. I think when
Mhm.
putting it in context of this conversation, I was waiting for somebody else to come and save me,
Right.
you know, or recognize me or
Right.
whatever that was,
Right.
young.
Right.
But I didn't understand the business side of
Mhm.
what you do as a lawyer,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I wasn't stepping back to look at the big picture of the company that I was working for
Right.
to say to myself,
Mhm.
why am I here and
Mhm.
how am I contributing to their goal?
Right. Yeah.
How am I contributing?
Yeah.
Because I really was just waiting for somebody to hand me a case to work on
Yeah.
versus bringing cases.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that made a huge difference for how long it took me to take off.
Mhm.
Years.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
a lot of pain.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think your point is really well taken.
Mhm.
We have to have agency.
We do. We do. I believe that. You know, I think about going back to that company that I would often bring up a book for everybody to read. I don't know that anybody ever read
Mhm.
what I suggested, and all of them, any of them, would have been helpful for them to have read to better understand themselves, the people that worked around them. I'm going to pull up my Audible library really quick just to read some of them off. Um, you know, understanding how business works better, but doing it really from a person perspective. And so this one called Blue Ocean Strategy was really, really interesting to me. Let's see, the fearless organization, the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Let's see.
We're going to get
The
dueling audibles.
the anatomy of peace, the psychology of achievement. Those are leadership. Oh, leadership and self-deception. Oh my gosh, that was such a good one. Oh, yeah, those are the ones that, are at the top of my at the top of my list. And so I think about, again, how much energy am I going to put into, becoming the best version of myself in the workforce,
Right.
right? And so I feel like, was there anything you wanted to bring up?
Brian
Anyone?
Tracy's stuff.
Oh, right. Brian
mean,
Tracy's right.
Eat that frog. Do it now.
Uh-huh.
The story of Lululemon.
Uh-huh.
Great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The mountain is you. The psychology of achievement is what you recommended to me, and I absolutely have listened to it at least twice now.
Yeah. And I started listening to that when I was 18.
12-week year, 12 rules for life, Jordan Peterson, compete to create. That's Michael Gervais and Pete Carroll, a NFL coach. I mean, lots of different things, but that's what we're talking about, which is, if to sit back and say, well, my company doesn't give very good training, or I'm waiting for that next training. If you want to gain your own confidence and build yourself, and it's to contribute to the company the best way you can in that moment, but it also is building yourself. You'll be confident and have lots of skills and knowledge that will translate into the next job if this one has run its course.
Right. Or even, spending the time and effort to educate yourself. You may find that in meetings you have more confidence because you have a better understanding of what is happening.
Yeah.
There just may be context that we don't have. I mean, I have learned so much over the last 30 years. And so to me, gaining confidence in the workplace is, are you taking the time? Are you making the effort to continue to educate yourself about, what you do, how businesses work, the relationship piece? There's just so much that we can step into. So agency, as you said, do I accept responsibility for myself at work, or am I waiting around for someone to rescue me?
Well, and the other part it takes is just, some time per day, even if it's an hour that you set aside to read.
Audiobooks
or to
on the
listen
way
to audiobook
home.
anytime you're driving. I can't imagine all the years I wasted, and I love music, love listening to it when I drive, etc. But it's so much more productive to listen to a book on tape, to Audible.
So for me, it's
to learn.
What I do when I get in my car is, what do I need right now? Do I need quiet? Does my brain need something to noodle around? Do I need music? What do I need? As opposed to just turning something on, like it being reflexive, I'm intentional about, what I listen to.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think I want to learn tonight, and I turn it on. I'm like, I don't want to learn tonight.
Well, the thing is it's all so much more available than it was back in the day, when you were using cassette tapes to listen to the psychology of achievement, right?
I have 2 sets still.
You were lucky you had a cassette player in your car.
Probably.
But it is, and I think anytime you're working to make yourself a better person is contributing in one way or another to the,
to the
whoever
whole.
it is you're working for, but also to yourself and your future, and making the space in the day. And this brings me back, I listen to Jim Rohn a lot. He's an old motivational speaker back before Tony Robbins. He was one of Tony Robbins's mentors, actually.
Okay.
And Jim Rohn is great.
Okay.
Old school, but, and he would say, when you're at work, and when you're with your family, be with your family.
Right.
And Brian Tracy would say, don't stand around at the water cooler. The person who's going to advance and have the most confidence and blow the lid off this thing is the one. It's not that you have no interest in being friendly with your co-employees, but they're, don't come in and sit around for the first 3 hours of the day drinking coffee and chit-chatting or reading the paper and doing those sorts of things. Get to work.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to distract you, because there are, and I used to be one of these people, hey, can you chat about this? And it wasn't about blah blah. It was just like me processing because I wasn't confident in what I was
Mm.
doing as a
Mm-hmm.
lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know, is setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Love to talk with you. We need to set a time, over lunch or after work, but I've got to get this done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, it's just that, let's
Mm-hmm.
go.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be kind in setting those boundaries
Sure.
and not ostracize yourself from the rest of the office. But it all is also recognizing if I'm using that time
Mm-hmm.
efficiently to get the job done, then
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have, an hour to go work out. I'll have another hour if I want to study or read or listen. If I'm just listening to that book on the way to work and back home, it
Right.
can make all the difference over a year's time. Whew.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I got all excited about it because I wish that I'd done it differently.
Mm.
But I do it now.
Yeah.
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 And it's made a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Whew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Going back to where we started, it's like, is work work, or are we trying to make work our substitute family?
Mm.
Are we trying to make work our substitute friendships? I don't know. Just things to think about, questions to ask ourselves. What is work for us? And it's not about not having relationship,
Mhm.
being kind and compassionate, caring. Um, but what's our goal? I think you started out there, why am I here? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Those questions we don't ask ourselves very often. Being really clear,
Yeah.
I think, is helpful.
Yeah.
And we can find great friends at work. But if our friendship becomes the focus and not work, it can get really messy.
Yeah. Friendship ends, it gets messy. We're not focused on work. We're focused on chit-chatting with friends. That's messy too. It's not helpful.
Yeah. Distracting to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. There can be consequence to that. Right.
Mhm.
So are we making choice?
Yeah.
Are we growing? Why are we working? Are we doing what we like? Because it's hard to stay focused when we're not doing things we like.
Yeah.
Or find value in. Maybe it doesn't even have to be something we like as much as it is something we value. It's just asking ourselves questions. I think we're just not very curious with ourselves. Why am I doing what I'm doing?
Mhm.
What's really important to me? What am I most afraid of? I just don't think we ask ourselves. What?
It's just nice to look back over it and feel like I've progressed
Mhm.
to the point. And I know I work alone, but it's still, I do a lot to be a professional,
Mhm.
despite struggles
Mhm.
with health and focus, that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
I still work really hard to
Mhm.
be the best that I can be.
Yeah.
And it's nice. I wish I'd done it when I was much younger.
Yeah. Well, I think I just keep working on it.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to find the balance. It would be easy for me to work by myself all day, every day, because of the way my brain works.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so interesting because I think, what would my life be like if I wasn't a therapist? What would friendships mean to me at work if I wasn't a therapist? Whew, that's a big question. Because I connect deeply with people all day.
Mm-hmm.
And so typically when I'm at my work desk, I am working. Yeah. Yeah. Then I go back to the needs thing and I think, what needs would be getting met and what needs wouldn't be getting met if I wasn't a therapist? Fascinating.
Yeah. And I think part of what we're talking about is having those conversations with ourselves, whether you can just do it, by thinking or journaling or having a conversation with somebody that you like to talk with.
Yeah.
But what, why am I here?
Right.
And how am I contributing?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And I wouldn't change
why
anything.
do I want this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so important to really do that.
Well, I think it's the only way we can really make choice. And are we surviving or are we choosing the life that we're living?
Yeah. And I mean, for me, for years was just existing.
Yeah.
Yeah. In so many ways,
Mm-hmm.
but work too, you know, and it didn't serve me well.
Yeah.
I mean, I was still a good attorney,
Mm-hmm.
but not as really good as I am now, but also, you know, without asking that question,
Mm-hmm.
I was not contributing in the way that they expected.
Yeah.
So I had to learn that the hard way.
Right.
Go out on my own.
Right.
You're either going to starve and your family's going to starve, or you're going to learn how to swim.
Right. Right.
And I learned, but even that took a long time.
Well, there you go. There's the contrast.
Yeah, there is the contrast. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, interesting conversation.
Very.
Thanks, babe.
I love you.
I love you too.
If you've been wishing for deeper trust and authenticity in your relationships, looking for better communication skills with your partner, we hope that you'll join us for our latest course, 10 Essential Skills to Building Stronger and Healthier Relationships.
Yeah. Everything that Walker and I do is something that we put energy into, creating it thoughtfully and intentionally. We're very curious about what might be most helpful for people in building healthier skills in relationship. We recognize it's something that we all need to practice time and time again, and know that we're not just talking about intimate partners in this course. We're talking about family, coworkers, friends. We really want to walk through this process of building healthier relationship in all areas of our life. And we hope that you consider joining us. Enrollment opens February 1st, launching March 20th, first day of spring, and the first day of our retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see you there.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to explore life with you. We encourage curiosity, self-growth, and we strive to be more compassionate every day.